Queer theory. The term queer once was a term of insult against gay individuals and communities. In the 1990s, the term was reclaimed by intellectuals to articulate gay identities. Queer theory, in particular, builds on lesbian critic Adrienne Rich's concept of compulsory heterosexuality and the lesbian continuum, Sedgwick's notion of the homosocial, Jeffrey Weeks's investigations on gay culture. It is also deeply indebted to post-structuralist theory, again both in abstract and specific terms. In abstract terms, it borrows from post-structuralism the suggestion that the relationship between signifier and signified is not only arbitrary but also historically and politically constituted. In terms of the specifics, it is deeply influenced by Michel Foucault's work, The History of Sexuality, where Foucault applies his understanding to questions of sexual identity. Foucault examines how the homosexual did not become an identity until the 19th century preoccupation with sex. The enshrining of sexuality as an identity rather than a behavior creates sexuality as an absolute that comes to define our sense of self, but also how we are treated by others. It was at the same time as these identities became fixed that certain behaviors were defined as socially unacceptable and illegal. Queer theory questions binary ideas of sexuality, the sense that there is a straightforward and clear cut opposition between heterosexuality and homosexuality. In her 1980 essay Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence, Adrienne Rich argues that society constructs our belief that romantic, intimate relationships only exist between a man and a woman, so that heterosexuality is seen as normal and anything outside this becomes deviant. Heterosexuality therefore becomes compulsory. In this context, questioning heterosexuality is a political act that challenges patriarchy. Rich presents lesbianism as a political choice as much as an innate feeling. While this does not deny those who see their sexuality as inherent, it suggests that sexual identities may also be chosen as political acts. Lesbianism is radical because it is a statement of rejection of the crippling male power that heterosexuality acts to support. At the center of this ability to choose is the belief that sexuality is a fluid line upon which one moves. Sexuality is not a fixed position. For this fluidity, Rich coins the term lesbian continuum. This does not mean that all women have or will engage in sexual activity with other women, but rather that all women, if they are to identify positively with their gender, must enact some kind of intimate relationship with other women. Through these experiences, a woman is able to appreciate her gender identity and sexuality in a way that is impossible through heterosexuality. Heterosexuality acts only to reproduce patriarchy. These experiences are denied by society, and women are encouraged to reject them in favor of heterosexual behavior. One can see this when a woman abandons her female friends for her new boyfriend, or feels embarrassed when she desires to spend time with another woman. The pressure on women to reproduce heterosexuality and to define themselves as heterosexual serves patriarchal power. In her book Between Men, English Literature and Male Homosexual Desire, Sedgwick coins the term homosocial to describe the male equivalent of the lesbian continuum. Rather than sexual relations among men, homosociality suggests strong non sexual attraction. For Sedgwick, this may at times be a displacement of sexual attraction. For example, she discusses the love triangle as an event that might be read as a displacement of homosexual desire. Two men competing for a woman's attention, but subconsciously being driven by the desire to maintain an erotic connection to each other. One particularly central tenet of queer studies is the relationship between sexuality and ideas of gender. Judith Butler is principally concerned not with sexuality but with questions of gender. The gender theory of Butler and those influenced by her is what we call anti essentialist. That is, it questions the idea that our gender identities are essential and biologically determined. Sex is the term used to refer to the biological attributes of a person, in most cases falling into the category of either man or woman. Gender refers to how a person expresses their identity as either male or female based on clothing, behaviors, and use of particular linguistic structures. Butler draws attention to society's socialization, which often uses these terms interchangeably. She argues that we have been taught to see a natural connection between gender and sex, so that someone who is biologically female will have a female gender, and someone who is biologically male will have a male gender. But this association is merely a matter of how we are taught to think and feel. There is no inherent reason why gender expression should be limited to particular biological sexes. Rather, gender is a series of impersonations. Influenced by postmodern theory, these impersonations exist without an original source. They are an example of bodily art's simulacrum, where the copy exists without an original. Butler first explores these ideas in her book Gender Trouble and later in her book Bodies That Matter. In these works, she argues for gender as performativity. This idea should not be confused with the idea that gender is merely a performance. What Butler means by performativity is that gender is something that exists in the stylized repetition of acts, clothes, speech, and body language, which over a period of time come to define a particular gender. One cannot freely choose a performance. This is something that society determines through the ways in which it tells us what constitutes male and female behavior. Butler's theory argues that the distinctions between sex and gender are illusory. We maintain gender to uphold the idea of sexual difference. The most radical part of Butler's argument is therefore that both sex and gender are performances, at least in the sense that the presence of intersex individuals complicates the idea that the world is easily split into two discrete sexes. Butler's gender theory is often used without discussion of sexuality. Her relationship to earlier gay and lesbian critics lies in the fact that she sees the association between biological sex and gender as one that society reinforces in the service of compulsory heterosexuality. Anxiety regarding gender is in fact anxiety regarding sexuality. We need clear identities as male and female to ensure a binary system of sexuality that exists only if those categories are maintained. Thus, gender binaries are socially maintained in order to maintain the idea of two sexes, in order to continue the promotion of heterosexuality as normal and gay identity as deviant. This in itself is in the service of patriarchal norms. In the 21st century, it has been important for queer theory to move beyond the concerns for homosexual identities to questions of bisexuality, pansexuality, asexuality, and other alternative expressions. In particular, the idea of queer itself implies not discrete gender identities, but rather the ability to see beyond gender.